from the Ticats Audio Network, this is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
A last-second tackle, a final-minute miscue. One team loses two quarterbacks. Week 6 has some sexy matchups. And who is the league's most underrated receiver? We'll soon walk down that road. This is the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Thank you all, as I always like to say, for checking in to 3 Down Football's top podcast that features the best analysts, broadcasters, and columnists from all over the country. This week, in my opinion, he is Canada's foremost feature producer and reporter from Sportsnet and CFL.ca. Thanks for checking in, Donnovan Bennet.
Appreciate it. I was wondering who jumped on the line, because when you said Canada's foremost, you're certainly not talking about Cauz, and you're certainly not talking about me.
Come on now.
I knew it wasn't me. I knew it wasn't me when I heard that.
Well, and this fella, he may be it's certainly the most outlandish. He may give the most controversial takes when it comes to the Canadian Football League, and he can also tell us what wine pairs with a Wagyu steak. So,
yeah.
Hey, Matthew Cauz from TSN 1050, always a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks for having me on. Great to be on. Great to see Donnovan. It's nice.
Well, hey, let's get to work, fellas. And this has been week 5, just as always, another wild week in the Canadian Football League. But it all started early in the week with the Rough Riders and the Elks, the 12-11 Classic. Matt, I'll start with you. I don't know where to go, really, quite honestly, so I'll leave it open-ended. What was your take with this contest?
All right, first off, it was glorious. It was a glory. You know what's important about the Rouge at the end to win? It was like, you know, when Men in Black, the little zapper that takes your memory away, it made us forget the first, 57 minutes of that game, which was really, really ugly. I will give a shout-out to offense here, to Trevor Harris and Saskatchewan. Harris, I think, got sacked twice on that touchdown-winning drive and still managed to convert. So shout out to the Rough Riders for doing that. Shout out to the Rouge, which is one of the only 7 French words I still remember how to say.
Go ahead, Donnovan.
It was a terrible game with a beautiful ending. It was 2, I think, bad teams. I'm sure Edmonton is bad. I'm not sure if Saskatchewan is bad, because somehow they have a winning record with a negative point differential. So you tell me if they are good or bad. We'll see. It was a terrible game, but it did have a beautiful ending. And I'm not actually going to answer your question. I'm just going to stand on a soapbox and work out my issues with people on CFL Twitter, now I suppose CFL Threads. Do not come for the Rouge. How dare you? There's nothing wrong with the Rouge. It is a great rule. I quite frankly, the NFL should have a Rouge. It would make the game exciting. People coming out saying, "Oh, it doesn't make any sense. You're rewarding, missing." Well, no, you're not. Actually, you're eliciting action, because you know what happens because of the Rouge? People take the ball out of the end zone and try to return it. So, were you upset with the Rouge? The 22 times when we've had a missed field goal returned for a touchdown in the last decade, I don't think you were. Gives us all types of scoring quirks, which makes things interesting late in game, including this one. The Rouge is fine. It makes our game special and unique and fun. Who doesn't like points?
Yeah.
And also it values the fact that field position matters. You know what I don't like? I don't like fair catches. You know what I don't like? I don't like touchbacks. Special teams in the United States essentially doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't matter in our game.
Doesn't.
No.
You have to coach them up when you have an American coming to our game to let them know how much it matters. I love the Rouge. I'm here for the Rouge.
Yes.
Don't you dare come for the Rouge.
Hallelujah. Absolutely. There's nothing worse than the NFL. That's the 25-yard line. Where are they going to start? The 25-yard line? Always on the 25-yard line. And when there's the rare missed field goal return touchdown in an NFL game, 90% of the NFL fans you can do that? You're allowed to take the ball into the end zone and go the other direction? Love the Rouge. Love and also the chaos. The chaos that comes with it.
Well, Dustin Nielsen, his call was just beautiful at the moment. I mean, the fact that he was like, "What is going on here?" I mean, which he drops. He seems to drop in once a game, but it's always at the perfect time because and the fans at Mosaic were going wild because they couldn't believe. I don't know about you guys. I mean, that game was probably at about 12 midnight. Quarter after 12 when it happened, and I'm just sitting there stunned at what happened. But there was just so much else that went on, like the Chris Jones flag for being on the sidelines. It was the wackiest game. And Donnovan, to your point, you're right about the single point. I believe if you go back and look, I think there was 5 single points in that game,
and every single one of them mattered. And think about how boring the game would be if we didn't have those 5 single points. You mentioned Chris Jones. We're all friends here.
Yeah.
I'll be the one to say it. This is a poorly coached football team. And he is not only the coach, he's a GM. And there is a football ops cap. So I'm not really sure what you do because they gave him more money than God to get him there. But they're not disciplined, number one. Fundamentally, they can't get people on the ground defensively. And defense is his trademark. It seems like he throws a dart every week to decide who his starting quarterback is going to be and who's going to dress, essentially. Has he dressed the same 3 quarterbacks? And none of them have played especially well. Gave Taylor Cornelius money in the offseason to be their guy. And then after a couple quarters of football, he's not your guy until he is your guy again. And then the Rouge. People want to come for the special teams unit, the special teams coach, which I think is somewhat fair because this is your only job. But leadership is top down. As a coach, you have to make sure everyone is aware of the situation and what the plan is. And so having a conversation with your returner after the fact, we're now crying over spilled milk. They've yet to win a game. They expected to be pushing for a playoffs. A lot of this, to me, is at the feet of Chris Jones. And it hurts me to say it because I love the personality that he is. I think he's great for the game. I love the fact that he's back in the CFL, but the return in Edmonton has not gone well.
You know, Matt, it's interesting to say because that has been the situation this week, and they'll be playing the Ticats looking for a home victory as they continue to have that crazy streak at Commonwealth Stadium. But, I mean, without banging on the team too much, I mean, I will give Jones a little credit on the post-game show. He took full responsibility for what happened with C.J. Sims. And, you know, Sims has been a good player for them so far this season. You know, but looking at this on a broad spectrum, I mean, this is something that, definitely special teams coordinators and head coaches got to be mindful of. You know, when you got an American player back there, they got to know the rules.
And especially at that point in the game, you know, just how important that point was. Like, it's also just about the location of that play late in the game, what the score was. Absolutely. And if you're going to be in charge of everything, like Chris Jones is, then when it comes time to give praise or blame, it's going to go on the guy who always wears black. And to me, the real bummer is I think we had higher expectations. We saw moments from Taylor Cornelius last year, and then they bring in Dunbar, they bring in Lewis, and you're like, this is going to be fun, this is going to be great, and maybe these receivers can help shepherd Taylor Cornelius the same way that great receivers can with younger quarterbacks, and it hasn't been the case. And at Bennett's point, it's like, you're our starter, then you're not, then you're starter again. It feels like he's improvising. It feels like, I'm going to go old reference here, when Robin Williams would go on Letterman and would just have 11 different thoughts in 10 seconds. That kind of feels like what's going on with Edmonton.
Well, and I want to just say one more thing because there's a lot we talked about, did he forget, in terms of Sims? Did he just not know? Was he coached? And then, the moment got to him. As a long time ago, but former returner, let me say one thing. You know what a returner always wants to do? Return the football. The returner is not going out there saying, man, look, let me look for a reason to not return it. So clearly, to me, what that meant was he was coached, because also part of the issue was the alignment. He was on the 15 and the ball flew over his head. Yeah, he was coached in that scenario. In this game, we're going to be on the 15. If it goes over our head, we'll give up the point. We'll play the long game, if you will. till the game's almost over. And they never switched from that. No longer is our plan. Our plan is now this because the scenario calls for something different. So there is, to me, zero chance that Sims went back there and this audibly thought, you know what, I don't think I can get this out. I'm just going to be laissez-faire with it. I think he was executing what he thought was the plan throughout the entire game, and no one alerted him that, that's no longer the plan right now.
Well, he called it a bonehead play on his part, and we'll see if I'm sure that'll never happen again. Let's be sure that will never, ever happen again to anyone, at least this season when on the Edmonton Elks, maybe even across the Canadian Football League. But yeah, what an ending to that game that was. Hey, guys, it's kind of a bittersweet topic to discuss because both of these fellas were such good guys, and one in particular has been doing it for a decade in the Canadian Football League. But these Ottawa Red Blacks have now lost Jeremiah Masoli, and Tyree Adams, both of their two top quarterbacks, within a span of a week. Donnovan, where do the Red Blacks go from here?
I don't know. I mean, they brought in two young developmental QBs just so they had some depth, just so they can practice. Crum, actually, I thought looked pretty good. Nick Arbuckle has not. And whether it's the multiple stops in Ottawa, the stop in Toronto, we've never seen him regain the form that he showed in glimpses as a backup to Bo Levi Mitchell. If it's me, and I'm that front office who has familiarity with the player from their time in Hamilton, I'm calling BC. And I'm saying, what's it going to take to get Dane Evans over here? Because in the East, you still have a chance. Montreal has looked up and down. Obviously, Hamilton gets their first win, but it's in a struggle, and they have questions of their own at the quarterback position, both in health and obviously, in getting to play at a high level. But, the crossover might not be as much of a threat this year as it has been in years past. So I'm saying it's musical chairs. There are only so many starting level quarterbacks that are healthy right now. McLeod Thompson took himself out of the equation and went to the United States. Now, maybe he comes back. We'll see. He's looking to exhaust NFL opportunities, and I don't think there will be any. But I'm saying Dane Evans comes and he fixes our situation and gives us, forget about the ceiling, gives us a floor of football. Because, quite frankly, I feel bad for Bobby Dice. I feel bad for that staff. You've got two black coordinators, a first-time head coach. You want to give yourself a good opportunity. Even that front office has not really had the benefit of a healthy quarterback since they've been in Ottawa. So they're starting from below ground zero. And so for me, I think, it's got to be an acquisition because you can compete in the East. That roster, I actually really love. I just don't know if we've been able to see the benefit of it because they haven't had consistent play at quarterback.
Yeah. A couple thoughts. First, on Nick Arbuckle. Clearly, I think he just got elevated. His brief time in Calgary within the infrastructure of the Stampeders made him better than who he is, because if Ottawa's about to start their fourth different quarterback in 5 weeks, that is a condemnation on Nick Arbuckle. If I'm the BC Lions, I'm saying thanks, but no thanks. I'm pointing to the last year's Grey Cup and going, I think the Argonauts needed two guys to beat Winnipeg. And Winnipeg at one point had Strevler and Zach Collaros. And we've seen this over and over that you need two quarterbacks. I heard that Ottawa was reaching out to McLeod, Bethel Thompson. I don't know. That's just, reports close to the source, close to someone. So we'll see. But you're right. This coaching staff, you got to feel bad for Dice. They haven't been put in a position to succeed. But, maybe you just, I don't know, maybe you go with Dustin Crum. I was doing some research. The guy's got a degree in aeronautical systems of engineering technology from Kent State. I mean, my God, I've never heard of a quarterback with that. And he did.
So that means the ball flies beautifully through the air.
Yes. It means he's taken his aeronautical systems degree and just about proper trajectory. I mean, I feel bad for him. It's like coming to a game that you've had down 9-0, and it's not like you've had a ton of reps. But if you can't get a McLeod Bethel Thompson, or you can't fool BC to getting Dame Evans, it's maybe go with Dustin Crum. And hey, Who's another MAC quarterback, Mid-American Conference quarterback who did well? Nathan Rourke. So maybe it'll be Nathan Rourke 2.0.
Well, I mean, it is tough sledding. I mean,
Yeah.
and you're right. I mean, I think you guys have touched so many points there because all Sean Burke has done is acquire and put together what I guess what he thought was going to be a good team. And we've talked about this on past podcasts here on the CFL this week is that it's a quarterbacks driven league and you got to have a good quarterback, Donnovan.
Let me throw another one out there for you. And don't aggregate this, please.
I will.
Listeners, I'm just playing fantasy CFL football. We mentioned earlier that Edmonton needs a shakeup of some sort. They committed money to Taylor Cornelius in the offseason, aren't getting a return on investment. They look to go in any other direction but him. Do you get off that money and say, okay, Ottawa, fresh start. Kahari Jones maybe can breathe some life into his career the way he did for an Adams Jr. Taylor Cornelius, you're going to the nation's capital. We want to play Daggy. We want to play young guys. We want to take a look at Trey Ford. Go ahead. Masoli's money, because he's done for the year, essentially, it comes off of the cap. So you can make it work that way. Is that a scenario where two teams can solve each other's problems in a way?
I don't know, Matt. What do you think?
First off, I love the idea of moving him to Ottawa just because that's a big story. Part of me wants to do the cliche of it's just rearranging decks on the Titanic, but I think Ottawa at least represents a little bit more stability than Edmonton, and that's a pretty low bar. And there is talent on the Red Blacks. Edmonton's defense is last in almost every category, so it's not like the defense is helping the quarterback. And listen, anything to get Trey Ford back on the field, or go get Michael Connor. Go get Michael Connor. Just bring in as many Canadian quarterbacks. And to quote Michael Keaton from Batman, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
The Trey Ford thing is interesting to me because all he does in his first career start is win a game on the road in a hostile environment in Hamilton. The very next game, he starts in Calgary, I believe it was. And I remember this specifically, throws like a 50-yard bomb, ran for like 21 yards, and then the next play ran a little off-tackle left run, and then bang goes the collarbone, and we haven't seen him, which to me is rather mysterious. I mean, so I'm not going to get into what the Elks are doing, but I'd like to see Trey Ford on the field. But can I kind of go back to this here, guys? I know you guys brought up the name McLeod Bethel Thompson. Went to I believe the New Orleans Breakers of the USFL, led the league in passing yardage. 35 years old. I mean, still can sling it at that age. What would it take, Donnovan, do you think, to get this guy back to the Canadian game?
Straight cash, homie. I mean, I think for him, he's exhausting NFL opportunities because fiscally that makes sense. Obviously, there's a family component wanting to stay relatively close to his young family as he can, and he's talked about the fact that his family has sacrificed for him being a journeyman in the game for a bit. So now it's time for him to sacrifice, and so could you do it for an augmented year? You're not coming up here for rookie camp and OTAs and install and training camp, and the first essentially quarter of the season is already gone. He's looking to exhaust some NFL opportunities. So let's say you get to Labor Day, the first half to third of the season is already gone. Could you say, hey, man, this is a 8-week endeavor. We're going to pay you handsomely for it. Maybe we make the playoffs, maybe we don't. I think there's a scenario like that where he's not uprooting his whole family, looking for housing, that type of thing. He's coming in someone who, how many different offenses has he been in? Can pick up an offense pretty quickly. And again, we know he can still spin it. He raises the floor of what you can do offensively. And then if you're, Ottawa or Edmonton, who both, by the way, have very talented receiving corps, then you give your players a chance. And I think that's really what they want. Is you've got guys who are in their prime, who are playing good football. They need a chance to go out and compete. And unfortunately, that's not the case right now.
Yeah.
Matt, I mean, with all due respect to Mr. Crum and his arrow, what was it?
It's like a rocket science. I'd have to look it up again. But I have a theater and history degree from McMaster. You think I know what this is?
Yeah, isn't that a franchise saying to its season ticket holders and its fan base that we, especially in the East, we got a chance still.
Yes, part of me was thinking on Donovan's answer. I was like, well, you know what? Why not just try to? And again, the jokes aside about Dustin Crum, but he didn't look half bad against Hamilton, and it certainly was a productive college quarterback. Maybe you try to develop him. But then if you do that with him, the message to the rest of the team is we're kind of punting on this season. To the season ticket holders, it's saying the same thing. It's like, wait a minute, you got the defensive, the best player in the league last year defensively, and you've got talent at other positions. And it sends that bad message. And it's not like the East, I mean, I think the Argonauts are really good, but yeah, I think you have to try to go and get McLeod Bethel-Thompson and try to convince him. And if you're Ottawa, try to convince the family, because he is someone who's talked about that a lot. And I'd like to see him back in here because we knew this was going to be a tough year for the CFL aesthetically from a passing game perspective, just because of youth injuries and the transition. So, yeah, I would absolutely like to see McLeod come in. And also he could be a mentor to some of the younger quarterbacks because he's a really smart cat.
Well, it's funny, Matt, because I actually think that you can do both at the same time. I think that you can bring in McLeod, which is clearly just going to be for 1 year or the rest of a year, and compete at a high level. And then you got a guy like Crum who you're developing who say, watch, learn, ask questions. Because the other real thing is they got to figure out who their quarterback of the future is going to be because, Jeremiah Masoli has a decision to make on if he wants to go through what is arguably the most grueling rehab. And he's just done 3 in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And so even if he does come back, you need to have assurance in terms of what's going to happen at the position because you can't just say, well, we know Jeremiah is going to be our starter. You can't rightfully say that. So that's one. And then the other thing is when you look at the QBs who've played at a high level, specifically that were young, they were groomed. No one in this league comes in and tears it up right away as a young player.
Yep.
The closest probably would be Chad Kelly, who played in the Grey Cup. But Trevor Harris and Zach Caleros sat behind Ricky Ray together. They were being stashed on the practice roster by Jim Barker just so that they could get visual reps. Obviously, Bo, was behind Hank, and in Calgary, they continued to have guys behind Hall of Famers up until Bo. And now, Jake, the mayor, gets his opportunity. Nathan Rourke had to sit, mind you, he played right away because Michael Riley had elbow issues, but he still sat and learned for a year.
And tied to that, Mike Riley. Mike Riley was a guy in his first year, put up numbers, but a lot of interceptions on a losing team. He was another one to add to that list.
You got to go back to essentially Flutie to find someone who came in right away.
Flutie threw more interceptions than touchdowns, and I believe the BC Lions had a losing record his first season, just to add to your point, Donovan.
Yes, but he played. He got on the field, right?
Yeah.
But whether it's Damon Allen behind Dunnigan or Ricky Ray behind Jason Moss, like these guys have all sat and learned and taken their turn. And so I think whether it's Crum or someone else in that room, I think McLeod could be a great teacher. Look at all the different great quarterbacks and quarterback coaches that he's worked with over his career.
Well, if he does come back, I hope he cuts the beard. That's all I'm going to say. Enough of that. Let's move on, guys. One of the things I love doing when I watch these Canadian Football League games is going to the respective markets and listening to the post-game shows. Of course, you're going to hear the passionate fan base, which is just amazing across this country. And someone offered something while listening to, I guess it was CKRM, I guess in the Regina station for the Riders game, because as we just talked about, that game was so wild. Someone said that Mitchell Picton is the most underrated receiver in the Canadian Football League. Matthew, you're laughing. Now, I'll go to you on that. If he's not, who is?
First off, I'm laughing, and we'll go to Donnovan for breaking down just what he actually looks like on the field. But are you telling me, Bubba, that the guy with the only touchdown last week, who was born in Regina, who played his college ball in Regina, that the people of Regina are calling him the most underrated player in the league? Shame on you for lying to me and to Bennet and to everyone consuming this. Of course they're going to say that. And it's something against him. I think he caught all 4 passes on all 4 targets. And I like this guy. It feels like a breakout year for him. He was injured last year, and I think he's had like 40-plus catches the first 2 years. But that's the most Regina story we're going to hear all week.
You know, just to balance it off, Wes Cates, who's on that broadcast, said, "Hey, let's slow down a little bit." Those were his words, Donnovan.
Thank you, Wes. Because I think maybe you can make the argument he might be underutilized, right? Like as a Canadian receiver, generally, if you're a wideout, like what happens? You end up being the wide side wideout. For the first part of your career, you're running routes basically for exercise. And then you're smart to move closer to the football. Maybe you get some short side action and you become more of a feature player. Curly Giddens Jr. being a great example. I think we could see Picton have a similar ascension where, okay, you're getting higher in the read progression. We're starting to feature you a little bit more, starting to tag your routes. So he might be the most underutilized, but underappreciated, underrated. Like, I don't think so. To me, the question is clear because I don't know if enough CFL fans outside of LaBelle Province have realized how good he is. It's Return of the Mac. It's Austin Mack. Chad Ochocinco, former Alouettes receiver, was watching last week and asked, who's the best receiver in the league right now? And, you know, Lawler, who hasn't been on the field, is obviously in that conversation. Rhymes has had a great start to the year.
Yes,
Dalton Schoen came out of nowhere last year and is a big player. Geno Lewis, for me, is probably the person who runs the best routes. But I thought when Geno Lewis left Montreal that they're in massive trouble. And Austin Mack walks out off the street and gives them a bona fide number 1 receiver. And I don't know if the entire league realizes what he's doing. And so for me, I think a star is born. I think Austin Mack. I think by the end of the year, the conversations we're having about him are going to be entirely different than the ones we're having in the first month of the year.
And also one other quick thought on Picton, how much of his productivity is because there's been other injuries at the receiving position for the Riders. So, I mean, Walker, Winicki, there's been a lot of guys that have been hurt.
It was an interesting name, and Matt, I love the way you broke that down because I guess he is a fan favorite, and there is no fan favorite team like the Riders as well too. You know, a guy I like out of Winnipeg is that Agadozi. I think that guy's got some crazy skills. He's got the incredible height and. One of those guys that we're seeing so much in the league with the quarterbacks throwing up the 50-50 balls in which he seems to have those good B-ball hands that he can bring it down over the seemingly much smaller DBs. So you got a guy for us there, Matt?
Let's give a shout out. By the way, we're going back to Winnipeg. They have enough, okay? They have more than enough. What about McRae? I loved Greg McRae.
Wow.
What I loved about his near missed field goal touchdown was if you go back and watch it, it was such a clever return. It was so patient. He's like, all right, blockers, do your thing. And at one point he was like shuffling across the field, and it reminded me of going into a mall at Christmas, and you want to try to avoid everyone and not knock someone's bag over. I loved watching that game, and so I'll go with McRae. I'll give him some love.
Well, and I guess without Kenny Lawler there, he's got an opportunity too. But you're right. That return, I mean, I would love to see one of those TSN and ESPN sports science things to see exactly how long he ran.
It was great.
I mean, I think it was counted out at 102 in terms of the actual yardage. But, I mean, it had to have been close to 150.
Oh,
it was amazing. All right, guys. Great schedule this week. We've seen actually some good matchups here. I'll list them off. I know we have a lot of our listeners here and not so much viewers on the CFL this week. Tiger Cats at Elks, Argonauts at Alouettes, Bombers at Red Blacks, Stampeders at Riders. Game of the week is Donnovan.
Well, it's not Bombers at Red Blacks. Unfortunately.
Poor Crumb. There's Willie Jefferson and Jackson Jeffcoat treating him like a pinata.
Yeah, to me, it's the yin and the yang. And maybe I'm a bit of a rubbernecker, and so maybe I'm a bit more fascinated with what's going to happen between the Tiger Cats and the Elks, and which fan base is going to feel even more panicked after this week. But clearly the best matchup in terms of entertainment value will be Argos Owls, and in terms of what looks like a preview, potentially, relax Tiger Cat fans, potentially of an Eastern Division final. Although there's lots of football to play, but right now, having that head-to-head win in your back pocket is massive in the East.
First off, with the Edmonton-Hamilton game, the funny thing is no one wants to be the team that gives Edmonton their first home win of the year. That is the hot potato. No one wants to be the team. So we're all sort of keeping an eye on it. But yeah, it's Toronto-Montreal. It's this dominant Toronto running game and that pass rush against Cody Fajardo, where it doesn't matter what offensive line is in front of him, he's going to get sacked. And I'm just curious to see every week, do they let Chad Kelly do a little bit more? Do they let him do a little bit more? So yeah, it's Toronto-Montreal for me is the game of the week. Am I biased? Yeah, I'm 100%. I'm totally biased. But
well, and I think the real thing is, they're top of the power rankings, defending champions, undefeated. But I think the real interesting thing for me in this game is it's a bit of a litmus test. Let's look at the record, quite frankly. They started the year with a bye. They beat two teams who have yet to who have one win between them. Hamilton just got their first win. Edmonton has yet to win. Yes, they beat BC at home. BC coming across the country on a short week, and Vern Adams Jr. decides he's going to have the worst game of his professional career. So to me, this is a litmus test. They're now coming off of another bye, so they've got two byes in the first just over a month of the season. This is a litmus test because they're going on a gauntlet now. They only have 6 true home games for the rest of the year because of Touchdown Atlantic being out east. They've got a much tougher schedule to finish the season. So I am excited to see, if after that big win in the bye week, if the Argos are a little bit drunk off of their prosperity, or if they kind of double down and show that, we are the class of the East, if not the entire CFL.
A couple quick thoughts, Donnovan. Shame on you for not mentioning that the Argonauts are undefeated in their bye weeks. They did not lose either of those games. But you are right. You have an extra week where you get to hear how wonderful you are. And how much does that seep in within the organization? So that is a good point. I'm curious to see, how do they look in the first quarter? Are they crisp? Are they at all sloppy? Hey, you get a little Darius Pickett against his old team as well. But no, you're right. From a psychological, emotional standpoint, that's a fascinating storyline for this game.
Guys, I can't believe you didn't say Stamps at Riders. And the only reason why I say that is because I look at these two teams and I'm trying to believe, are they good? Are they, well, I don't know if elite might be going too far.
Too far.
But are they good football teams, Matt?
I don't know.
Either one of these things.
I honestly don't know. I expected a little bit more from Trevor Harris. I expected a lot more, and I know part of that is the injuries at receiver, but I expected more from him. And for Jake Mayer, Calgary's like, all right, we chose you. And now he's looking like the guy who got pulled in the playoff game last year. And for me, it's always weird. It's strange seeing Calgary not dominant. We had a decade or so of them just every year pencil them in for 13 wins. And, 12 would have been a disappointing year. So to see this, it's a little discombobulating. I guess these teams, they just want to try to keep up with the Lions and Winnipeg, but it feels there is a massive haves and have-nots in the West.
Well, I mean, this matchup and how these games head-to-head play out will let us know if we may have an opportunity for an all-Dickinson Grey Cup. Because one of these teams, in order to make the playoffs, are going to have to cross over.
Yeah,
that's BC and Winnipeg clearly are the class of the West, and for me, we'll be hosting playoff games, and so it's a matter of one of these teams are going to have to go on the road to get there through the West, and one of these teams are going to have to go on the road and get there through the East, and it's just a matter of who's going to lose that coin flip. So the matchups between these teams throughout the year, I think, are going to be really fascinating to kind of figure that out.
Guys, before we wrap it up, I love this topic so much on that we had last week. And Donnovan, I saw you guys on the Waggle. You guys talked about this. So quick audible. You can go wherever you want on this. The best uniforms in the CFL are, right now, Donnovan, your favorite jersey.
Like in the league currently today?
Sure, right now. I know you went way back on the Waggle talk, but you pulled out the Memphis Mad Dogs with that, as you said, that hockey style, big logo, small number jersey. Like, man, you blew me away when you called that, because I'd actually forgotten about that. But let's just focus in on what we're seeing right now, because I know a lot of these teams have featured those sort of I guess newfangled kind of monochrome uniforms with one color, like we saw that with Montreal last week. What do you like? Who do you like right now?
Yeah, in Montreal's new third jersey is nice. Argos a little too much blue. It's like, are you the Tennessee Titans or are you the Argos? Are you North Carolina or are you the Argos? It's like you're supposed to be the double blue. You're not just supposed to be just a lot of Oxford blue. So
that's been my comment.
Not the Argos. I do love an old jersey, and I don't say that, so the old jerseys, even the Argos old ones, the big Jason the Argonaut, the Ricky Foggy specials, if you will. I like. But if I had to say right now, you know what? I'm going to go with the BC Lions, because I'm not a fan of the color scheme. That wouldn't be my choice. It's a little too Halloween. But when they come out and they're all black and there's a little bit of accents of some gunmetal and the orange pops, and they've got that fog machine going, and new BC place, it does look hard. So I'm going to go with the BC Lions as the best uniform right now.
I think for broadcasters, they're probably pretty happy because they had the gunmetal numbers on the black, which were just impossible. But now they've gone to the orange numbers to help us all out when we're calling these games. Matthew, your pick.
And also having LL Cool J played in the background never hurts. Am I allowed to go?
Why didn't TSN give us more of that concert? I was a little mad at that.
Plenty. Yeah, we got plenty of it, but. I'm going to go, what about 1984 Montreal Concords? Can I go Concord? At least it's still CanCon. It's still not the U.S. expansion. If I'm going to,
I was 1 year old, so you're going to have to describe it for me. I don't remember seeing it.
It's got like the fleur de lis. It's got a very French sort of flair and style to it. And thank you for again, making sure everyone knows the age difference. I'll go with Edmonton. They've got no love on the show today. The sharp angled E's on the helmet. I'll go with the Elks. I'll go with the Elks. They need a little bit of love, and I won't just go full Argonaut because that'd be too predictable.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they have sort of maintained that classic uniform and the classic color, and yeah, I do. Though I'm not a big fan of when they go the reverse with the green, with the prominent green helmets and then I guess that sort of gold color when they go the opposite every once in a while. I think they do it on Labor Day.
They do that so that Taylor Cornelius can try to blend into the field, so maybe no one knows where he is. It's like, where'd the quarterback go? He's hidden. Damn you, Chris Jones, you and your shenanigans.
Folks, the CFL this week is just one example of the outstanding, informative, and in the case of Morreale and Hitch, entertaining content you can enjoy on the Ticats Audio Network. Link, subscribe, comment, wherever and however you listen and watch your favorite podcast. We certainly appreciate it because we like to put out this programming for you, the CFL fan. Guys, awesome podcast as always. Your opinions, your thoughts, you're making me laugh. Great stuff. Donnovan, I know people are loving your CFL content as well. Where can we find you?
At Donnovan Bennet is the handle on Twitter, Instagram, and now Threads, I suppose. And yeah, Going Deep podcast for Sportsnet, the Waggle podcast for the CFL. Be sure to listen, favorite, share, subscribe.
Matthew, I know you are all over the place. I know you're currently kind of doing a morning show stint right now. Yep. You're normally doing game day, and I guess that'd be from 2 to 4.
Yeah.
When people want to talk to you about your, again, your fine choices in wine. And what should we be drinking right? Should we be drinking more white than red right now at this time of the year?
Absolutely. Don't fear white wine. Also, here's a little tip for everyone. White wine can go with steak. You can get a full-bodied Niagara Chardonnay, not that far from Hamilton. Just go with 30 minutes at Cloudsley Cellars, Thomas Batchelder. There is Mason Vineyards. There is so many great local, big-bodied Chardonnay that will go with a rare steak. So get out of your comfort zone, everybody. But yeah, the Matt Talks Wine and Stuff with Interesting People podcast, mcauz56 on Twitter, and sometime, most days, yammering on TSN 1050.
This is the only podcast where you can just get this kind of information, folks. Again, you guys, thanks for joining us. A great podcast this week. Folks, this has been the CFL This Week. I'm your host, Bubba O'Neil. We'll see you next week on the Ticats Audio Network.